Hello Dram fans, today we've got another Tullibardine. So this is Tullibardine Sovereign, which is a core range product from Tullibardine, and I think it's probably either the or one of the entry level products from Tullibardine. This is a true supermarket staple here in the UK, but it's not quite one of the bottom rung entries in terms of price or presentation. This Tullibardine Sovereign, we know that it's a 43% whisky, it's a Scottish single malt, and it's matured in first fill bourbon casks. And you might have seen the eagle-eyed amongst you, if I can get that gold bit at the top to catch the light, that Tullibardine, as well as Lindors and Glasgow Distillery, they're another one that are getting creative with their founding year, claiming 1488 on the box and the bottle, which actually makes them 120 years older than the oldest operating distillery in the world. So if you're wondering what the deal is with the 1488 year on there, it actually refers to a record of a brewery that may have been on the same site as the Tullibardine distillery. If you're interested, Tullibardine was actually founded in 1947. Obviously, none of this really matters. They can imply whatever they want to, but I do find it a little bit dishonest and disrespectful distilleries, which legitimately have been around for 200 to 300 years, when these newer distilleries make these claims. Back to this whiskey though, this one you can almost always find it for sale in UK supermarkets. It kind of looks like this out of the box. Fairly nice kind of faux premium presentation. I've actually got no idea what that QR code takes you to on the back there. If you're feeling brave, give that a scan. I would imagine it probably just takes you to the Tullibardine website. Not much information on here. We know that it's 43% and it tells you that it's matured in first fill ex-bourbon casks. No age statement on this, but the fact that it sells in UK supermarkets and that it's not too expensive, probably not too old. Speaking of price, this stuff normally sells for a full price, or what they claim is the full undiscounted price of £40, which in my opinion is far too much for a mass-produced 43% no-age statement whisky. But the saving grace of this one's that it quite often goes on special offer, and you can usually get it for not much more than half that price. And, spoiler, if you can get this for about £20–25, I think it is worth a try. So let's get some in the glass, and I'll tell you what it's like. One thing that I do like about this whisky, and you can tell that I do like something because it's nearly gone. One thing that I do like is that you would imagine that that's natural colour. If there's any colouring in that, it's certainly not a lot. So, Tullibardine Sovereign on the nose. Very malty, rich, sweet maltiness. Malty, barley sugar, lemon, creamy. Unusually rich maltiness, I would actually say. As well as some hearty, dry grains, cereal gristiness on the nose, dry grassiness as well. The grassy quality of this whisky actually reminds me a little bit of Wild Turkey bourbon. Also an interesting, especially for a bourbon cask matured whisky, which we know this is, it's only seen bourbon casks. I'm getting a note of cocoa and bitter oak, as well as some caramel, vanilla, barley sugar, lemon barley water, as well as quite a tropical fruit note and a little bit of vanilla. So definitely not breaking news, no shocks there on the nose of this whisky, but it's a very pleasant, very enjoyable nose. Let's see how it tastes. Have to say, slightly weak arrival. It has got more of that sweet maltiness though, and a little bit of a tropical fruit note, and perhaps a little hint of like a sweetened cloudy lemonade. More creamy vanilla, as well as kind of like a lactic creamy yogurt note. Very fruity, and perhaps a little bit of a fruit tea note, like a peach tea. But, and this is kind of unavoidable when you consider that this is a 43% no age statement whiskey, it is a little bit watery. As for the finish, quite malty, tropical fruit, and probably medium short, but with a fairly pleasant dry maltiness. So yeah, a decent whiskey. Decent, but only decent, and obviously a big part of the reason why this is, in my opinion, a little bit of a better performer than your true entry-level supermarket budget brands like your Tamnavul and things like that, is the ABV. They are giving us more than the bare minimum with that 43% production. And I think that because of that, it is a reasonably big step up, at least a noticeable step up from your average £25 blends, and also things like your Jura and Tamnavul that are selling when they're all on offer for about the same price. I've actually had the dregs of this kicking around for quite a while, probably had well under a quarter of a bottle, and I've kind of been keeping it as like a rainy day review, perhaps keeping it for a week when I didn't have anything more interesting to review and something to put out as a little bit of a filler. But I actually went back to this one after I had the Murray McDavid Tullibardine Cask Craft. So same distillery between these, but this is a core range release, and this is an independent bottling with a further cask maturation applied. And the reason why I wanted to go back was actually the tasting notes that you get from the Murray McDavid, because it actually says, obviously something with this much sherry, you might expect to get chocolate and raisins and stewed fruits and nuts and Christmas cake and all sorts of things like that, perhaps a little bit of spice. But one of the tasting notes that Murray McDavid give you for the Tullibardine spirit itself, before they put it in the cask finish, they say that it has a character of creamy malt, light fruit and a hint of cocoa. And I thought, hint of cocoa is not something that I'd normally expect to get from a bourbon or refill matured whiskey. I'd expect that to be coming through from the sherry cask, which the Tullibardine Sovereign doesn't have. But I think that they're absolutely right. And it's one of those rare times when the tasting notes on the bottle actually make sense, and it's probably not a coincidence that the good tasting notes are coming from an independent bottling, which is perhaps made and marketed by people that have a little bit more of an idea what they're talking about, but it is absolutely there. I am wondering if the cocoa notes that you get from the Tullibardine Spirit might be perhaps a little bit of a combination of the malt and the barrel char, but to my surprise, it is there. I think that the Tullibardine Sovereign, which is our example of the Tullibardine base spirit in this comparison, it actually has a lot of the fruitiness present in the cask craft. In fact, I feel a little bit like I didn't give the base spirit quite enough credit when I was tasting the Murray McDavid, because a surprising amount of what is great about the cask craft is also present in the base spirit that we're getting from the Sovereign. Of course, that's not to say that this stuff is as good as the cask craft, because it's not, but it's just surprising to get an almost direct comparison and to be able to see what's coming from where, and at least some of that experience did surprise me. So what I would say, your homework for the week, if you find yourself with a spare maybe £50, then it's actually not a bad idea to get perhaps a bottle of the Sovereign and the cask craft, or something else entirely. Get yourself maybe a standard bourbon matured core range offering from a distillery, and find perhaps a slightly more interesting, perhaps better presented example from that distillery, but one that's come through an independent bottler that hopefully offers you a better presentation. And just spend some time, some quality time, comparing the two and seeing what you can find, what's similar and what's different. I think that it gives you a really nice little masterclass, in this case, in the difference between a bourbon and a sherry maturation. And it kind of unambiguously tells you which flavours are coming from where. Now, it may be a little bit harder to get a standard kind of cask light representation of a distillery to compare to your independent bottling. But I think it's a really interesting little experiment to do, no matter where you are on your whiskey journey. Just whatever you do, don't go out there and spend the full price, £40, on a bottle of the Sovereign. Because it's good, but it's not that good. If you do try this though, and you like this style of whiskey, I would absolutely recommend going out and trying perhaps like a bourbon matured Bladnoch, or a Balblair 12, or perhaps a Deanston. I think that they're all fantastic whiskies in a similar kind of vein to this one, but with a bit more going on. So thanks for joining me for this one, and thanks for joining me on this little voyage of discovery. Let me know if you've had any similar experiences comparing various expressions from the same distillery perhaps, and what you think about Tullibardine. Thanks for watching, and cheers. Oh,